Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Sandeep Pednekar, and you're watching One Universe, the show based on the nonprofit One Universe that fosters positivity through the promotion of love, peace, and harmony. And to promote that love, peace, and harmony, we always have guests that foster positivity in the community. And today we have Dr. Amaya Iratzoqui. Welcome to our show once again.
Thank you for having me again.
Uh, it is always a pleasure. Uh, I serve on one of the most important things that is going on in the city, which is Sexual and Domestic Violence Task Force. But you are in charge of doing so many things for the task force, and I am in awe of the things that task force has done and what you have contributed to the task force for the city and county and Mid South at large. So thank you for that upfront.
Thank you.
We, of course, have talked about you and your personal life in our previous
Mhm.
interview. So I would like our listeners to watch that as well. But I want to get into the meat of the discussions. Apart from the task force, tell us the good things that you are implementing through not only your office but other things as well.
So, one of the things that I really like to say about the University of Memphis is we have this motto, driven by doing, but it is something that very much the faculty who are involved in the community really believe in. And it's a unique opportunity because a lot of cities will not have the university so integrated
Hmm.
into its operations, whether it's city or county government or whether it's nonprofit services. And so I've been very fortunate in the 9 years that I've come to Memphis to have so many entities willing to partner with someone from a university setting. And I've been working now with, as you mentioned, the domestic violence and sexual assault realm. So I predominantly work with victim service agencies. I work with law enforcement and the DA's office, and then with city and county government as well. And so I've been very fortunate because as an academic partner, I can help all of these entities highlight the work that they're doing, whether it's through grant applications to be able to get them more funding for expanding their services, expanding their staffing,
Mm.
but then also too being able to evaluate the work that they're doing to highlight their effectiveness of their services and then kind of call for improvements and modifications and expansions or changes to programming where it's needed because ultimately while my partnerships are predominantly with these folks in the community, the larger community of people that we never talk to are the ones who are really affected by the work that they and we do.
So I know I have attended a few events apart from the task force meetings, one at the University Center maybe
Mhm.
2 years ago, and I don't know, there were like, I don't know, 300 participants, right? So what is the number of nonprofits that serve in this domain?
Well, I think really the nonprofits are the heart and soul
Hmm.
of this entity and in this endeavor as a whole. I mean, a lot of times nonprofits tend to silo themselves. And so they'll kind of focus on their particular population that they
Hmm.
serve and they kind of focus on all the work that they and their staff can do. But it's harder for them to kind of look outside their agency, their entity, and explore partnerships with other realms, with agencies that may do the same type of services or may have type connected services that they can link up with and provide a broader continuum of care. And as an academic, I have the luxury of kind of looking from the outside in
Hmm.
to be able to say, well, you do housing and you do advocacy and you do court based accompaniments. And really, all three of you don't need to be in isolation from each other.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
really need to be connected and talking and working together. And that's really the role that I've been able to play here is because I have individual relationships with a number of these folks that I fostered since I moved here
Hmm.
9 years ago. And then now I'm able to connect these individuals because of the relationships that we already have.
Yeah, and I see that I brought this up is because I see that you have done a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
The impact that bringing people together, I always believe, is the energies that each individual entity has. when it comes together, it forms a synergy that
Mm.
is much greater than the sum of all energies put together. And you have done that successfully. So I definitely am in awe of your work. But I also want to reach out to these agencies that are still siloed.
Mhm.
They still work in their own neighborhoods because, of course, their impact is most significant in their own neighborhoods.
Right.
Understood. But they're falling short, as you rightly mentioned, that okay, there could be this that is missing. And there are already entities that are offering those services,
Mhm.
and they need to form a coalition, and you have been able to do that. So the idea, of course, is one, to reach out to these and also share this interview with them so
Mhm.
that they realize, oh, okay, well, yeah, we know about this, but now this is a hammering of that information, so we better reach out. But also, because our viewership is throughout the world,
Mhm.
we are not CNN, obviously, that we have millions of viewers. But no matter how small of a viewership we have, the idea is to take this structure,
Mhm.
and others can watch in different cities of the world and implement them in their cities so that they can have such a good and positive impact in their own communities. So now coming to the work that you have done, what are the good things that, apart from what is it, having a coalition and bringing people together, what are the beautiful outcomes that you have noticed?
Well, I think, first and foremost, being able to have a trust between the agencies and myself. A lot of times, academics can be viewed not just as outsiders, but as entities that don't really understand or
From
value
their perspective,
from
they're
their perspective. Absolutely.
insignificant, kind of.
Yeah, and so
Hmm.
it's something where, because of the trust that we've built between these agencies, and I've been able to, for example, help them apply for funding opportunities, but it's even in indirect ways. I'm also, because I'm an academic, I also teach, and so serve the community through the education realm as well. And a number of my students have been able to get internships and jobs at
Hmm.
a variety of these agencies. I brought partners from these entities into my classroom so that they're able to not just highlight their work and spread the information about their agency, particularly those who are serving underserved populations,
Hmm.
but also too, because I am vetting my students, I'm able to bring that education and their employment into these agencies, and I'm able to benefit them the way that they're benefiting me in my work.
Hmm. So, when you're talking about these interns, we are talking about impact twofold. One is that the entities get interns which they do not have to pay. That's
Mm-hmm.
free,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yes,
Okay. And the second thing is that the interns, the students over here, get credits.
correct.
And then you get to actually see to it that you're a conduit between these two so you can help both of them.
Right.
So, how many entities have been able to avail of this help?
Sure. So I'll give you a few examples. Casa Luz, which is the
Hmm.
only Hispanic and Latina serving domestic violence organization
Hmm.
in Memphis, Ines Negrete, is a dear friend of mine. And so she, as the director of Casa Luz, has come into my classroom now for 3 or 4 years. And I've
Wow.
had um, 5 Latina women because Casa Luz serves and is served by Latina women,
Hmm.
and those individuals have gotten internships while they were in school. Some have gotten employment while they were in school and after school.
Wow.
But in addition to that, I've had interns placed at the Women's Advocacy Center, which is a nonprofit, faith based nonprofit that serves Bartlett, Collierville, Germantown, the suburbs.
Hmm.
And I've also had agencies like Love Doesn't Hurt, which is an agency serving LGBTQ folks in
Hmm.
Memphis and Shelby County. And then I've probably had the most students work for the Shelby County Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center, which is the main broad victimization
Hmm.
agency here, not domestic violence specific.
Hmm.
And I've had about a dozen students come from the university and work there. And I've served as a reference for them. I've made connections between them and the agency. And most of those positions were not internships, but were actually paid positions.
Oh, they were, oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were government entities?
Yeah, so the Crime Victim Center, while they do hold internships, because they have such a turnover in population, they
Mm,
hire a lot more part time, which a lot of students really do well with part time employment. And then they hire full time staffing as well. And I've had actually some overlap between students who work, for example, at the Crime Victim Center, especially being bilingual, because that's a really big asset
mm,
here. And then they've also worked at agencies like Asadus.
very nice. So I also want to get into the details of one other thing that you do for the community is help people or entities get grants.
Mhm.
So let us talk about that.
Okay. So I've been able to have a second role as the director, the research director for the Public Safety Institute.
Mhm.
And in that directing type position, I coordinate between the university and these communities to be able to apply for funding opportunities, particularly towards program evaluation and assessment. But also, I've been able to, while I do a lot of these directly myself, I've also been able to link up other academics with some of these agencies to be able to apply for funding opportunities. And that can look like any number of things. We can help them simply put together the grant as much as we're able to do, whether that involves editing, whether that involves helping write the narrative, which is a bulk of the grant application. But
You
other
mean when you
times,
say editing, editing of the grant application?
editing of the grant
Okay.
application. And so a lot of times, one of the biggest hurdles for grant applications for these agencies is simply just having the time. I
Hmm.
mean, if they don't have a separate person, which most don't, to be able to apply for grants, that can be a full time job.
Mm.
And when they're doing direct service provision, being able to carve time out of their day, their week, their month in advance and think towards these grant opportunities coming down the line,
Mm.
it's hard because they're doing the work every day. And so having the ability to say, okay, let's talk about this grant application process. They give us the bulk of the material that we need and we help them put together the application. Now, in addition to that, there are a number of grants which would involve some type of evaluation process. And in that, I can write myself in as a research or academic partner if it makes sense for me to do so.
Mm.
If it's a domestic violence grant, it typically does. If it's not a domestic violence grant, because I do work outside of the DV realm,
Hmm.
I would more connect them with someone that's an expert in that area.
Okay.
That would make more
Within the
sense
university or
within the
outside?
university for the most part.
Okay.
I do have research partners at other universities, but a lot of times, and what I've seen in Memphis is because a lot of my research partners are outside of Tennessee, it doesn't make as much sense when they're out of U of M because being in the community that you're serving and being able to write for that community and recognizing the context of
Right.
the population that that agency is serving, it's just, I mean, you can't really measure that in words.
Hmm.
So a lot of times having a partner within the U of M is inherently more valuable. And so I've linked faculty across various disciplines to agencies within the community, especially government agencies, but the nonprofits as well. And then they have brainstormed their own projects. So sometimes the connection is all the role that I play.
Hmm.
Other times I serve as an evaluation partner on the grant application. And then finally, I serve as kind of an editor of any grant application that they serve. So in that capacity, I would serve more as kind of a copywriter role. And that, is a variety of ways that I can be useful, but it also provides that agency or that entity something tangible because the work that they do is oftentimes so consuming that it can be very easy to get kind of wrapped up in your
Hmm.
work
Yeah.
and to be able to get something out of it, especially from someone who's asking you of something to something to do, is valuable. And so I want to just serve my community as much as they're serving the community.
Okay. So now, is there a cost associated with that?
So if there is a grant application that we apply for, so like let's say I write myself in as
Hmm.
an evaluator on a grant. If we
Hmm.
don't get the grant, then I don't get money.
Okay.
But in terms of charging consulting fees or anything like
Hmm.
that, no, we do not.
Okay. But as part of the grant,
Yes.
there
So
is a fee that you assign.
the fee would be written in within their budget, and the grant would award the money primarily to them, but also
Hmm.
to us. So, for example, this cycle, there are a number of programming related grants where they cap research funding up to 2% of their award. So
Mm-hmm.
the agency would always get the bulk of the money. It's never
Mm-hmm.
going to be the case where we would get the bulk of the money and they would not.
Right.
The only exception to that is if it's a research grant, which would be something that would be conducted by the university. We would be the applicant and they would serve as the partner by providing the data, but they wouldn't have to do any work for the evaluation. The benefit for them for a research grant, there's a lot of agencies that have never been formally evaluated.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we explain to them is if I apply for a research grant to evaluate their programs, all they would have to do for this grant would be to sign a letter of support for our project.
Mm-hmm.
We get the money, we do the evaluation, and then we give them this evaluation results, and they are able to take that and apply for their own money, whether or not we're involved. And
Nice.
so
Okay.
it's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
long-term impact.
Okay.
They can show their effectiveness, but then they can apply for state and federal funding and say, look, we work, but we want to do more work, so please give us more money so we can increase our staffing and our service capacity. But it's not an initial benefit for those agencies. And that's where those relationships of trust come from, because while the initial benefit is not there for them, knowing that the long-term relationship is being fostered and I'm serving to help them in the long term, they're able to kind of see that as for the bigger picture and say, okay, in this particular grant, the U of M will get the money, but then we'll be able to take that evaluation and apply for these multi-million-dollar grants from the state and federal government that are ours, that are the agencies, that are not U of M's.
Okay. And then you also serve as the researcher who can provide information on grants that they were not
Absolutely.
aware of in the
Absolutely.
first place.
Yeah.
So let me stretch this a little bit more. Do you also help other nonprofits and businesses?
Businesses. I've not been in the position to help many businesses, unfortunately.
Is it because nobody has approached you or you are not allowed to?
Oh, I would say that I think that it just hasn't had an opportunity. And
Okay.
so one of the advantages and disadvantages of being in an education setting is that a lot of times there doesn't always seem to be a visible overlap. So, for example, something an agency like FedEx or another agency that would be based in the area like International Paper may not think criminal justice to approach
Mm-hmm.
because I'm based in the Criminal Justice Department and the Public Safety Institute is based in the School of Urban Affairs and Public Policy, which also includes the Criminal Justice Department. So for those entities, they might think, maybe I need to approach someone in the business department, or maybe I need to approach someone in public administration. And so I think those connections just haven't been made.
Okay.
But also, too, the academic realm is just as guilty of siloing. And so oftentimes we don't have the imagination to link with other agencies that could very well be interested in partnering because crime is everybody's concern, right? It just doesn't necessarily serve that agency directly to be able to work with someone in the criminal justice department if they think of, I want to improve my business practices. But at the same time, we keep seeing there's a lot of news articles and reports coming out where businesses are not basing their warehouses or their distribution or their stores in Memphis because they are concerned about crime. So it is very much something that we could partner with them on. We just haven't yet. I will add, though, that the University of Memphis and their administration with relation to the police department have also been starting to get involved with PSI because of the larger issues of public safety surrounding the community.
Okay. And this, of course, is for the benefit of our listeners. And if there is something that, let us say, a nonprofit or a business is not directly associated with sex or crime or things like that, if they were to approach, then you could guide them to other people
absolutely
within the University of Memphis
yes.
and say, hey, you know what, this department or this person can help you with that.
Yes.
And again, it would be the same thing that there would be no fee associated, but
Correct.
they could involve themselves as part of the research and the cost of that could be incorporated in the grant application itself.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm going to stretch this. you say there are grants, but based on that, then you can apply for the state or federal funding as well.
Yes.
So, what I want our listeners to know is that we have a phenomenal resource here in
Mhm.
Memphis, and everybody should avail of this. And if it is not something related to crime,
Mhm.
they can still approach you.
Absolutely.
What is a contact number or email that they can reach out to you at?
Sure. So I would say that psi@memphis.edu is our main email address.
Hmm.
And that is a good resource to submit any questions or inquiries to. And if there is a contact that we have in the university setting where it doesn't necessarily relate to the work that we do, I'm happy to make that contact. University of Memphis, I think one of the things that is a benefit of being here as long as I have been is that I know a lot of folks who are on campus, and people tend to stick around in the academic setting. So those relationships remain long term as well. And being able to say, "Hey, I know someone in business or in English or in accounting," is a real asset, I think, of our university.
Okay. And also because I'm an engineer, I'm a businessman. And when you say some research, first thing that comes to my mind as an engineer and a businessman is businesses associating themselves with universities and having a technology transfer.
Hmm.
So, of course, I mean, that might go to engineering or chemistry or physics and all those kinds of departments. But is there something that you can share when it comes to technology transfer associated with the research done by the University of Memphis and a business can work with them?
Sure. I mean, again, because everybody's concerned about crime, one of the things that oftentimes is a real interest to businesses is things like crime mapping. So think about when you're, looking for a space to set up either your home or your business. You're looking at the neighborhood around you, right? And you want to know,
Mhm.
is this an appropriate spot for me to be based in whatever capacity you are? You want to know what's going on in the context of your neighborhood. And so, using things like geographic information systems or GIS
Okay.
technologies
Hmm.
and crime mapping and being able to do heat maps where crime is concentrated in particular areas is a real asset a lot of times. Certainly law enforcement agencies are concerned with that, but John Smith, who's looking to move into the area and trying to know about that information, is going to be interested in that as well. And the same thing again for a business trying to look to put their warehouse in a particular area. They want to know, okay, what's going on in that area? Are there a lot of crime? What type of crime? Is it a lot of robbery? Is there a lot of domestic violence?
Mm,
Is there a lot of car break ins? And that can base their decision accordingly. So I would say that, and that's kind of a prime example of a way in which it is more of a technology transfer because we're able to develop these heat maps and be able to display them and transfer them to the relevant agencies and entities.
perfect. So, thank you for going in depth into that same thing that you mentioned earlier. So, I know that when people view
Mhm.
this video, they are going to get, I think, motivated would be the right word to approach and seek funding because people are really good at what they do.
Mhm.
And I know I'm really good at what I do as an engineer or
Mhm.
the business. And I openly say, hey, I'm dumb when it comes to reading a grant
Mhm.
application because the grant language is slightly different than what you're accustomed to.
Absolutely.
And reading it is one thing, then understanding it and then applying and using that same language when you apply in that grant application becomes even more of a challenge.
Mhm.
So you would be the right um, person, the department, and the entity to help so many organizations out there. So, ladies and gentlemen, remember it is psi at memphis.edu, correct?
Absolutely. Yes. And, really, one of the things I like to say, because I shamelessly stole it from Judge Gilbert, Greg Gilbert is a domestic violence court judge. His recurring point is that more money and more people are always the magic bullet for improving anything. And that's what grant opportunities can do. Grant funding and having a partner in the academic realm can do for you. And so being able to say, hey, I'm going to reach out to this entity, I'm going to reach out to this resource and see what benefit my agency can get, having the money to have more people is really central for any entity.
Absolutely. Yep. Yes. And everything boils down to finance, having the funds to do anything and
And to
everything.
continue on, yes.
Yes. So,
Yes.
all right. So before we end today's show, is there anything else that you would like to share?
I think one thing I would like to say is I've been very fortunate to serve in this capacity. And it is something where I am very grateful for the trust from my community partners. But really, I have the far easier job in being able to highlight the work that you and they do. And so, really, my work is only as necessary as being able to foster the ability for these folks to do their job. So I'm just grateful to have that role.
Well, and we are grateful that you are here. And as I mentioned earlier, and I will say it over and over again, that you are doing a really good job.
Thank you very much.
Keep doing it. But the reason I keep on saying is because we expect more from you.
Absolutely. I expect nothing less. I expect nothing
Okay,
less.
I'm being funny, but I know that what you're doing is already too good as in good, really good. So thank you so much for your services, and thanks again for coming on our show. And we look forward to having you on our show few more times, talking about some of the specific programs that you do. So we will talk about that in the coming months.
Okay. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
me. Thank you all.
So thank you for tuning into our show. Until next time, have a great time. And know that when you tune into our show, you are going to have information that will be motivational, inspiration, and something that you can take home and implement in your household, in your neighborhood, or for the community. So have a great time. Bye bye.